Whew, y'all, we are live, and today's show, again, it's aligned with this Better Together Empowerment Series and the Living Powerfully Experience, but we're showing up at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Baptist Church, and we're talking about the MLK Continuing the Dream Community Alliance. We're also talking about a task force, right? A number of us have been in a space where we heard about an organization called WE.R.E, Washington Employers for Racial Equity. It's W.E.R.E, WE.R.E. And what's exciting is they committed $2 billion.
Yeah.
Would it be? $2 billion
yes.
To invest in Black Washingtonians, that's their language, right? To address inequities, known inequities. And so they're 3 years into that 5-year commitment. So what we're able to do from an MLK perspective is we're here to come together to really support community. If you're not aware of it, we want to make sure you're aware of it. If you're like, what are they talking about? Why are they referring to inequities? What inequities might exist? We're going to go over that as well. So we're going to talk about the research, which you already know. I'm going to go through it relatively quickly. We'll put the detailed link in the chat so you can go through it at your leisure. We're also going to talk about some opportunities that are coming up. They have the first thing that I've seen, public event, that's called a Supplier Diversity Conference. That's on September 5th.
Okay, yes.
It's exciting.
Yes.
It's like, let's go,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So if there's an opportunity and you have organizations, 80 to 100 of the top employers in the state of Washington, that's what WE.R.E, W-E-R-E, stands for, Washington Employers for Racial Equity. I'm going to pull up real quick there, Dr. Linda.
Yes.
So I just pulled this up. When you see this, Washington Employers for Racial Equity, it says our commitment to progress.
Yes.
An equitable future for Washington. So they're focused on changing the status quo. And when you think about MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., it really is about how do we show up and do it the right way. Leading with love, right?
Yeah, and I think leading with love means, first of all, that, when you see that image says that every one of us deserve to have justice and equitable outcomes in our lives. And what has happened, we're not equitable when it comes to health benefits, when we come to job opportunities. We're often left behind. So all of this money that's out there, the community that's most impacted by it is not getting it. Dr. King Continuation of the Dream is what we started last year with a core group of our prophetic pastors in the community, and we all take on a different issue, is to really educate the community, bring together the community so that we can be empowered, but most of all, receive these benefits, because that's what's going to lift us out of poverty into equitable outcomes for our community and for each other. So I think this continuing the dream, we don't need to start the dream all over again. Dr. King started that for us, and he said, I may not get to the mountaintop, but you will. Keep pushing. So continuing the dream is really about continuing what Dr. King laid for us. It's still real. We still have mass incarceration. We still have lack of home ownership.
Yes.
As far as blacks, particularly blacks, have the least amount of home ownership. And we know home ownership leads to economic stability.
Yes.
So it's important that we get that this money is available to the community. If a person want to own a home, they ought to be able to get that down payment to be able to move into housing. But like you see, the money comes in, a few selected people know about it, but the communities that really need it never gets it. So that's what I'm excited about, really elaborating and expanding this great work.
I love it. So Nathan, I think I'm gonna need you. So we have a beautiful producer here. So Nathan, I'm gonna need you to find a way for that PDF to be zoomed in, so we can I don't know, whatever that looks like to you, share your screen, zoom in. We got to figure that out. So what's super exciting is, again, I'm going to add this back into the document. And what I love about it, I'm going to add this document rather back into the view, because again, we have an opportunity to say what is weird, but then what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?
That's right.
And so there's a video that Nathan pulled together about King.
Okay.
With his voice,
okay,
talking about community and equity, and we're basically showing up following this lead. So we're going to start with the end in mind. We're going to start with this energy. So Nathan, go ahead and share video number 1.
Let us fight passionately and unrelentingly for the goals of justice and freedom. Let's be sure that our hands are clean in the struggle. Let us never fight with falsehood and violence and hate and malice, but always fight with love, so that when the day comes that the walls of segregation have completely crumbled in Montgomery, that we will be able to live with people as their brothers and sisters. Oh God, our gracious Heavenly Father, help us to see the insights that come from this new nation. Help us to follow Thee and all of Thy creative work in this world, that somehow we will discover that we are made to live together as brothers, and that it will come in this generation the day when all men will recognize the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that. What did you like most about that?
Well, what I liked about that was Dr. King said, one thing that I heard is that we need to keep our hands clean and that we should operate in love. And what does love in action look like is, for me, it's lifting up those who can't lift up themselves. As we often say, we're not looking for a handout, but we just want equability in achieving the finances and the resources that we need, to break down the barriers that have often hindered us and stopped us from continuing to move forward.
I love it. You got something you want to share? I ain't mad at you. You can bring that in. So what I love about this is, again, we got a couple of things happening. So we're focused on, again, our commitment to progress. Some people have never heard of WE.R.E. They didn't know there was a $2 billion commitment to progress. And so we're really prepping for an event on 11/11. I just said, let me bring in some voices that can help amplify so that we're ready to take full advantage of this. So the first event from WE.R.E. is going to be on September 5th. They're hosting their very first supplier diversity conference, the first public thing I've seen in this 3-year period. And I'm like, great. We want to make sure we take advantage of it, but we also want to lovingly hold people accountable. And I use the word love because MLK talks about leading with love, right? We want to invite people in to a process. My pastor's crazy. I'm not even sure what he's going to say right now. He's looking at me kind of crazy. But what you going to say? What you going to say about the concept of lovingly holding people accountable?
First of all, good evening, everybody. My apologies for my tardiness in this historic week as the Democratic National Convention is underway. I am a political and news junkie, so it was very difficult to peel myself
Thank you for coming.
from being here. So I'm still trying to get to room temperature.
Okay.
Yes, let me get to room temperature.
Okay. I wasn't sure what that look was. I was like, I like to set the stage. So we're going to go a little bit through this research. So apparently you're saying if I share my screen under our research, it's going to be zoomed in. Oh, Tracy's screen. Okay.
Then share this tab instead.
Add to stage. Is that what we're doing?
Then share this tab instead on the research tab.
Share this tab instead. Okay, can you guys see that?
Click on, yep.
Okay. So this is the research. Are they seeing the research documents? Woo! I love it when you got professionals in the room. So this is a commitment to progress, and this is some stuff we already know, but some people are not aware of WE.R.E., right? And this is really about us showing up saying, oh, by the way, there's some stuff coming down the pike on 11/11 and 12/12 of 2024. We're going to come back, but we want to be able to actually have a conversation between now and then, give people a couple of months to kind of, start to satiate and understand why it's so important. So we had a group of CEOs, Washingtonians, represent their commitment to progress toward an equitable future for Washington. What we said is we weren't going to spend a whole lot of time talking about what's not equitable, because we know, but it is important to ground just a bit. So what they said, and I'm just going to scroll down, this was Christine Gregoire and Steve Mullen were the originators of this document. And Pastor, I know you're going to love this. It says, findings are clear. Black Washingtonians and their families experience significant disadvantages across multiple facets of life.
Click share this tab instead at the top.
Oh, am I not sharing? Okay. Is that it? Oh, I love technical people showing up. Okay, y'all seeing that now? Okay, so this is where I started. This was this concept of, again, because we can always post-edit, loving it. So this is the Washington Employers for Racial Equity, their commitment to progress. The first thing they did is commit $2 billion over 5 years. And we're 3 years into that 5-year commitment. So we're like, we got to show up and we're ready to help those organizations to really impact the Black community. So we wanted to start by grounding people on what the research is, and this is their research document that they did, telling us what we already know, but you got to do what you got to do. So they started out with a commitment to progress, and they're working toward an equitable future for Washingtonians. This is a 14-page document, but I like that they start, and I'm going to go right to the findings are clear, right? There is inequity in Washington State. And they start with Black Washingtonians and their families experience significant disadvantages across multiple facets of life, the effects of which compound over time and cross generations. They talked about COVID and other recessional economic elements magnify the impacts and deepen those racial inequities. Absolutely. Disparities exist regardless of your socioeconomic status or your education level, and point to inequities across systems, structures, and policies. Again, not really telling us something we don't already know because we live in it, but it's important for anyone who's watching. And can you put the link to this in the chat? So he's going to put the link to this document in the chat. It's a PDF. It's on the WE.R.E site. It is here for everyone to digest. So addressing these disparities and ensuring racial equity for Black Washingtonians and all communities of color will take all of us. Yeah. Working across public and private institutions, systems, policies, and societal structures. When you hear this, again, nothing you don't already know, right? Some people get upset and they're like, you know what? Show me the money. Where the $2 billion at, right? This is not the show me the $2 billion, but this is, hey, there was a commitment made, and we want to lovingly start by creating an invitation to leverage community to help fulfill these commitments, right?
Yes, I think when you ask me what did I hear when I hear that, I hear collective power. That I think the idea of us coming together collectively and working together is going to ensure that we get the funds to the right people, because funds can come in, but if they're not getting to the right people, we're not really addressing the problem.
And let me clarify, there's no $2 billion in funds that are coming to Black people.
Okay.
Just so we're clear, I want to, again, you got to set the stage and provide clarity. There are $2 billion that were committed to be invested in improving the lives of Black Washingtonians. That's different. And so what they said they were going to do, I'm going to go to this one-page commitment to progress, the areas where they say they're going to invest those dollars to improve our lives. There were 7 areas, and we're focused on 4.
So
one of them is economic empowerment, right? Getting healthier, happier, wealthier, and wiser. They want to improve equity and inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion within their workplaces. That's happy. That's healthy, because you can stress us out to a point, right? So we want to make sure that they're improving equity and inclusion within their workplace, number 1. Of the 7 things, that's the number 1. Number 2, they want to focus on economic empowerment. They want to invest in Black businesses and improve their supplier diversity, which is why I was so excited that, yay, they have their first supplier diversity conference coming up on September 5th. It's from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. and it's at the Microsoft Convention Center. Right. Free for all. Right. So it's one of the first things. It's not the only thing, because they have best practices that they put out there. There are things that have been done. What has not been done is at a grassroots level, at a community level, who is this organization? Who are these organizations? What are some of the great work that's happening, and how do we get it into the hands of Black people? You'd like to talk about operationalizing and getting it, making it real. So we're what are the programs? What are the improvements? What are the opportunities? How do we actually change lives of Black Washingtonians? So a couple of, any thoughts?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts about it. You know, when I think about the $25 million that they allocated for racism as a public health crisis, which I think is directly related to this, but that barely touched the surface of people being able to get sufficient resources to impact their lives. Because when we think about COVID, the impact of it on Black businesses was tremendous. I mean, they lost more
Right.
businesses closed. And so it's like COVID really set us back even further. And now how do we even rise to that level? So when you're talking the funds, I think it has to be funded so that that people get it. I mean, we were able to fund probably 10% of the people that put in an application. Right. I mean,
Right.
$25 million.
It was nothing.
It was nothing.
It was nothing in the ultimate scheme of things, and we're all over the $200 million for the Community Reinvestment Fund, which is amazing. We're talking $2 billion with a B, and we're talking about corporate partners who have deep pockets, who we can believe that they actually want to drive change. And so one of the
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the first documents that's in this research is what we already know: racial inequities across institutions and systems.
Yeah.
Black babies, 2.3 times more likely to die,
Yeah.
right? The number 7, it says Black Americans are 1.5 to 7 times as likely to have a bad outcome as white Americans. 1 to 7.5 times. And then they list all these areas in society, all these places where diabetes, right? Be suspended in school, be incarcerated as an adult. 7 times more likely to be incarcerated as an adult if you're Black, right? 2.1 times to be more likely to be in foster care, to 5.2 times to be more likely to be denied a loan, right? So these are things that we can see are happening right now in our lives. And so we don't want to spend a whole lot of time on these, but in case you're curious, there's 14 pages of this, right? In our states where we are. We talk about the medical inequities. We talk about how these inequities compound over a lifetime and across generations, right? I mean, it's really shocking if you weren't living it. It's definitely, an opportunity for us to say, I get it, I see it. Again, we could talk about this on and on. There's 14 pages, and I'm on page 3. Right? Are there disadvantages as it relates to income? Absolutely. So we could go through this document. Can you put the link in the chat one more time so people can go through this? Because I really want to spend time on solutions and what we can do. Unless anybody wants to talk more about. I mean, there's no question. When you talk about it at a systemic level, that means it's in every aspect of life. Right? You're more likely to be unemployed than white Americans, regardless of your education level. Again, you can have an advanced degree. You're still more likely to be unemployed, right? Structural inequity in healthcare, education, criminal justice, personal finance. These aren't things we don't already know, right? You talk about it on a regular basis, right? So what we wanted to do is say thank you to these weird employers who did this research. It was important for them to do this research. They said Black talent is underrepresented in higher paying jobs. We already know that. Black employees face barriers to promotion and career advancement. We already know that. Black owned businesses make up a disproportionately small share of corporate spend. We already know that. So one of the things they're doing with this upcoming event is they're actually saying we want to spend more dollars with Black businesses. So we're here to say yes, and we want you to help you to do that.
And so my question is, and I know Dr. Braxton did a powerful job last year when we initially started the Continuing the Dream. It was like 6-7 pastors took on different issues, and Dr. Braxton took on the issue of reparation. So my question to this whole thing, I mean, it's good to come out with programs, it's good to come out with dreams, but what's the commitment and the understanding of the impact of the past inequities and how they continue to further the gap that we're in? So it's like, okay, yeah, it's all this money, but is it going to really bring us forward? Are we going to be able to make up for the past inequities, which I think is important in order for us to really create equality and equity in our systems?
So I'm gonna say yes, and
Okay.
the words, all the words are here. Pastor Braxton, I'm here for advice and counsel. Anybody who's online, if you want to join us online, just say, I want to join. I got something to say. We have a producer here who can bring you in. All the words are here. I'm the most optimistic, positive person that you ever heard of. Meaning, I believe we're 3 years into a 5-year commitment, and I'm like, let's go. Let us help you get there. So what they said here is we have work to do. Racial inequities exist across multiple dimensions of life with cumulative effects. These are their words, not mine. So they're saying all the right things that reinforce one another. These disparities cannot be explained away by socioeconomic factors, and the evidence shows that structural barriers to equity exist in our state and in our nation. It says racial bias and structural inequity have no place in Washington's future. We must all work together to take decisive and thoughtful action to secure an equitable future for all people in a state. So we got to believe that this is what they want.
I think this is probably a good time for the creative pause.
Thank you. Yes.
Because sometimes we get the cart before the horse. Those dollars were promised, not allocated, promised. As a genuflection in the wake of George Floyd, when America was reckoning with race, corporations felt under some pressure to be perceived as they were corporate constellations with conscience, that in a capitalist system, that the bottom line was not the only bottom line. And as Weber says, the market knows no morality. They wanted to show that there's morality in the market, particularly as it comes as a response to this nation's long and tortured history on racial discrimination. And so $2 billion was promised in Washington state to somehow or another be not the, but a redress to inequities that manifest themselves here in Washington state. One's conclusion is only as sound as one's assumption and one's presupposition. If your presupposition and assumption is that this $2 billion is going to eradicate all inequities and injustices compounded over the years, then we're in a foolhardy search trip to nowhere. So then if one's conclusion is derived from a more sane assumption and presupposition that this $2 billion is a gesture, corrective gesture,
Yes.
to the accumulated inequities and current inequities that create disparate outcomes for people of color in comparison to people from the majority culture. Then we have to ask ourselves the question, even after the remittance of those $2 billion, what piece, what scope of this overall problem are we going to attempt to eradicate?
I'm glad you said that.
What scope?
I'm glad you said
It won't
that.
take care of all of it.
I'm glad.
It's to be decoupled from the conversation of reparations, which is far
Yes.
more pervasive and deeper. So what scope of it? And
I'm glad
if you
you said
just
that.
throw money out there, the roaches and everything else will come forth.
Right.
It will set us against one another. And the money will be spent,
And
poorly spent, wasted, and you will harden the hearts of would-be do-gooders because they'll say, we gave you $2 billion and you wasted it. And the problem here is that we don't have a $2 billion thought process in place that considers what scope of the overall problem can be eradicated with strategic and careful allocation of these resources toward clearly spelled out feasible, doable, measurable outcomes. And I think we have to develop that process. We need to pause. We're 3 years in. 3 years into what? 3 years into collecting all the $20 billion and putting it into account, let it earn interest. And while we're doing that,
Yes.
we need to develop the process by which we will determine what are we going to aim for. From my hearing of it,
Yes.
we're not even close to determining that.
So-
We'll simply be fighting each other for
Yes.
crumbs,
That's what-
fighting each other for crumbs. And I don't see anything good outcomes.
Yes.
No.
Totally
So yes. What do you?
2 minutes to break.
Oh, 2 minutes to break. So I just want to clarify on the screen. Thank you for that. That was beautiful. There is no checks for $2 billion being given to the black community. What there was a commitment to invest a combined $2 billion in corporate, community, and philanthropic efforts to support racial equity over 5 years. Again, we're 3 years into that 5-year commitment, and these bullets that you see on the screen are the 7 areas where they said they were going to focus. They said, number 1, they wanted to foster an inclusive corporate culture inside their organizations, including removing bias to achieve racial equity in hiring, evaluation, promotion, do anti-bias training, racial equity education for employees, support a community of black professionals, amplifying the voices and experiences of black employees and customers. That was number 1. Number 2, they said they wanted to employ a workforce that reflects our communities. The percentage of our workforce that identifies as black should mirror the percentage of the working age population that identifies as black in the communities in which they operate. They're saying they want to achieve racial parity in average compensation for employees in similar job categories. That was number 3. Number 4, they want to increase black representation in management and senior leadership positions. Number 5, increase internships and work-embedded learning experiences for black students. Number 6, increase diversity and racial equity among contractors, vendors, and supplier networks, and increase investment in black-owned businesses. And the last item was, and we're going to invest, it was just a restatement, a combined $2 billion in these corporate, community, and philanthropic efforts to support racial equity in the next 5 years. So it was really these areas. So we're going to come back and talk about the 4 areas where we're going to prioritize, and it's not about generically what's happening. There were some things that have been shared, and how do our children take full advantage of these opportunities? So stay with us on Renton Avenue Radio. We'll be right back with a break, and stay tuned.
Okay.
So we're still live to the audience. That was just for the radio. Yes. So Pastor Braxton, did these 6 things or did these areas provide some clarity for you?
Yes and no. They're still ambiguous, and safety lies in ambiguity.
See.
It's still no certain aim. And he who aims for nothing hits it. End up with, practically speaking, an economic snatch and grab. And you ain't gonna have no clear outcomes, like when it talks about equity in management positions and so forth. And you're gonna have a conference at Microsoft. Microsoft just eliminated its DEI program.
Okay.
Because they got contracts in southern states that have outlawed DEI. And therefore they don't want to end up in lawsuits, so that here up in Washington, the whole tide, the rock in the pond, the ripples come all the way to the state of Washington, where they eliminated their DEI, and it's through DEI that is the practical, tactical means by which you get equity in management. Because the default position in this country is going to be privileged toward white. So unless you have a mechanism in place to measure where you are and to intentionally hire with these goals in mind, you're not going to get equity. But if you're eliminating the structures that bring that about, it's just rhetoric on a page. You've literally outlawed what you've listed as a goal and objective. So I'd use language that I don't want to use publicly, but that's a bunch of
Shenanigans.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Shenanigans.
Come on now.
So there is a detailed plan. There's been some work done. I would say it's at a pretty high level. I agree with you. We got to go deeper. There's some programs that are happening, and we look forward to understanding even more of them, to bringing them into community. There's some things that are happening that I believe, right, are for our good, and so we are excited to bring that back in to our community, to really bring it forward. Your face looks like, She reading this list.
No, I agree with Dr. Braxton. I mean, my first thought around it, and I'm thinking just even, you think about local city government, when the George Floyd uprising, they were, we were demanding that they were putting in, different things, equity commission and all of that. And, and then once the noise quieted down, everything went away. I can tell you that happened right here in our city. And so it's like, we got to go back with the noise again. And so they weren't committed to that. It was only because...
Remember the old model cities programs of the 70s? They wasted so much money. They assassinated all the black leaders, decapitated the black community, and then threw money to buy off all of those who could be appeased, and then flooded the community with drugs and put everything to sleep. That's what they did. See, I've lived long enough. I've seen this movie before.
I love that.
I've seen this movie before.
So what do we do to? Are we back with Rainier Avenue Radio? Welcome back from Rainier Avenue Radio. Of course, the conversation could not end, but you'll be able to watch it on replay. So what I'm excited about is, how do we actually drive change? I mean, I feel like I've been reaching out to different people in community. Again, I'm showing up on 9/5, number one. On September 5th, I will be at the Supplier Diversity Conference, connecting with individuals, organizations, and really trying to understand who's serious, who's not in, who's nice. No, I'm just joking. But who's serious about this work? Like, what are you doing? How can our community really take advantage of it? And I'm willing to work. I'm donating my time. Ain't nobody paying me. I'm paying for video crews to say we have to come together as a community, or nothing will happen. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? We're 3 years into a 5-year commitment. So if we don't start to have some loving conversations, inviting people to say, we're here for you. We're here to support you in doing what you say you want to do.
Well, I agree. I mean, I applaud your optimism. And so, we really do. I mean, some of us have been around long enough. We've seen these programs and things. But, there's still hope. I mean, I just believe, Dr. King's dream that we continue to live forward will happen. And so, I'm positive about it. I'm excited about it. I have a bit of hope in it, but I think it's always good. It's good to remember, because when we remember what they've done, what the system has done, it allows us to not get caught into those traps as we move forward into a new way. So I think, as Dr. Braxton was saying, is that we need to make sure that the plan, that there's a clear plan, and we can't take it all. Like you say. $2 billion doesn't take on the whole issue. So prioritize, what we're going to do, and maybe there's impact will come out of that. Right.
Even of these 6 focus areas, the 4 that we're saying we're going to really focus on, because at the end of the day, fostering an inclusive corporate culture inside the organization, that is foundational before you start bringing people in. Because I'm like, don't hire my people if you ain't going to create an inclusive culture for them to thrive in. Otherwise, you're just kind of bringing people into a space. And I was in we want to make sure we're setting people up for success. So I'm saying fostering an inclusive culture, critical. You can start focusing there. Number 2, you said you wanted to invest in our young people, increase your internships and work embedded learning experiences for our young people. We're going to make sure, there's a loving, safe space for the young people. Those internships are slightly different. They're designed for learning, right? They're designed for creating new skills for those young people. So we want to make sure, and typically there are Black employees and others that are nurturing those spaces. So internships tend to be much more positive experiences. So we want to make sure to understand, where can our Black youth go to get these opportunities that you say you want to increase?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
What is the entity that has been tapped to oversee this, to define its goals and objectives and its enforcement and measurement mechanism? Well, because without it, that means that everyone will interpret it in their own way, according to their own self-interest.
Yes. So it's called WERE, W-E-R-E. There is an organization. They call themselves the current. They call themselves a convener. The current. I told you the current ED is either a member of her church or your church or her husband is. But Sherline Wilson is the current executive director. Craig Dawson is on the executive advisory team. Christine Gregoire was one of the founding members, still part of the leadership team, from what I understand. And so they have a executive director and then a leadership team, at least,
Is WERE funded?
They are somewhat funded. They're not funded with $2 billion. She would tell me.
Somewhat funded is like somewhat pregnant.
So let me just say, I would say they have some funds, but Sherline is limited in her ability. Okay, I have a power issue. Sorry. So I need my man to work the system. Well, here we are. Can you help me out here? Thank you so much.
I raise the question because sometimes people they're tasked, but they're not funded. They don't, practically speaking, have an office with staff, with allocated dollars to meet payroll so they can move forward.
They do.
And where did that money come from? Was that part of the $2 billion? How was that money collected? Were they left to then go have to raise that money so they can get up and going? Are we expecting something out of someone for whom they're not even set up to do the job that we're out here thinking they're doing?
Part of that is true, which is why we offered some grace, because we had this conversation 2 years ago with Lyle and some other people. And we're like, hey, where are we at with this thing? Sherline had just got into the role. The first ED left, and he left and wrote a book called The Elephant in the Room, A Fable on Racism. That's a whole nother story. Philip was lovely. They already reached out to me as president of the Black NBA saying, we want you to help us elevate the work we're doing. I'm like, let's go. She has gotten another full year to get her team in place to try to, and I'm not saying she has enough, but we kind of gave her a pass because we're like, okay, I see what you're trying to do. She had a plan. She's working some task force. So there is a plan. There is some work happening. She's not looking at our community level. She's looking at it at their level of the organizations. And now, to your point, as of last year, the WERE organizations are 80 to 100. I think there's like 60 or 65 now who are paying dues to help fund their work. So like you said, where this $2 billion is at, it's going to be about us connecting with the organizations who signed up.
Antoinette wants to share thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Did you bring her in? So she.
I can bring her in. Mom.
Okay, perfect. So does that make sense? Does that answer your question somewhat? So I feel like that's where we got to do some work.
Yes, and no. As a 63-year-old pastor of 3 churches now, who's on any number of boards locally and nationally, who started 7 not-for-profits myself, I know what it's like when you legally exist, but you don't have the funds and the funding. And after a while, it becomes you exist to make payroll rather than exist to make the difference that you were supposed to make because you are underfunded. And so I have major questions about the how functional WERE is in terms of the allocation of resources so that they have the human capital and the others to actually be about what they're about. Because if that piece is not strong, if they're the mechanism through which you're going to get the thought creativity about what's the scope of work we're going to do, how we're going to enforce it, how we're going to develop these relationships with these corporate partners, get those funds, how we're going to oversee it. Because one of the things you have to look at, we are now in an era, over the last 30 years, part of our political culture has been to make anti-discrimination illegal. You had I-200, which legalized discrimination against blacks in state contracting because collecting data was now seen as a discrimination against majority people. So how do you correct a problem you can't even define? So it was now legal from Vancouver to Vancouver to not include anybody. You've got what's going on now where, like I said, in some of our southern states, to where any DEI is illegal. So Microsoft, that most people look at as being a role model in corporate equity, here in Washington State. They've closed their DEI offices and operations so that they don't run into problems with the contracts that they have with state governments and so forth in other places. Most people don't even realize that. So that we have made in this country half of our political systems, our major two political parties, if you look at Proposition 2025, has been to make DEI and any mechanisms by which you realize inclusion and equity illegal. And so we're in a litigious society, so if you have any program that actually leads to equity, that has strategies by which you realize it in your workforce, in your management, so that people don't hit these invisible ceilings of race and class and gender, and gender assignment and all those kinds of things, that you will get hit with lawsuits.
Yes.
Because that is, and so to avoid those lawsuits, we're closing down that operation. So how in the world are you going to develop a mechanism that can navigate those waters to realize equity at a time when realizing equity is illegal? I mean, this thing is not as simple as some simple people think. That's why I say, as a pastor, we can preach all we want to. Reverend, we can preach all we want to up here, but then we got to come down and we got to put together budgets and plans and move systems and structures. And that's why governors are better at leading sometimes than senators and as pastors and others than professors at universities, because we actually have to get down where the rubber meets the road. And so I'm looking at the apparatus behind this. Is the apparatus in place to make good on $2 billion worth of resources to make $2 billion worth of corrective?
So that is a great question, and I'm going to say it depends. No,
everything depends.
It depends.
But we got to get down to the specifics.
We got to get down to the specifics. So they've
because
done.
As me and Reverend Smith have said, we lived through the Model Cities program,
Yes.
where they quieted down the burning cities at the ends of the 60s and the riots and the politics of assassinations that wiped out all of our progressive and idealistic leaders. And then they flooded our communities with drugs, and through the Model Cities programs, quieted down, bought everybody out. If they didn't kill you, they bought you out. And if they didn't buy you out, they drugged you up and got quiet. And then all of a sudden, these things called inner cities, which didn't even exist in the 1960s. It was a sociological, not a geographical reference to hopeless chocolate cities where people were depressed, economically, socially, politically depressed zones in the cities that white folks had abandoned, that were left fallow. Until recently, with gentrification, white folks decided we want to come back in and move y'all out to the bridges and the underpasses. And so, having seen this before, when I see people throwing money at a problem, but there's nothing in place, or you're not clear, you got words on the page that sounds good, then I get real suspicious.
So I think a part of our next steps are to go even deeper, to look at the plans that they have, and the plans and the reports that I've seen are high level. I don't have the latest content, but they're high level. They're providing some summary information about representation, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm saying, what are the opportunities? Like I'm showing up with the task force saying, what are the opportunities? If you're about supplier diversity, we want to find out from you, and you. What are you doing? Right? What are the opportunities?
I'd be showing up at Microsoft at the conference they have coming up, saying, in light of the fact that you guys have closed your DEI offices in Washington State, you're housing this here, which is a symbolic gesture.
Right.
But what structures are in place to actually realize equity, given that the structures that were in place, you eradicated them? So practically speaking,
those are the questions.
Talk to them.
So we're gathering questions lovingly to create a space to ask these questions. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, the thing I've experienced is they don't have to speak to us, which is why we said, let's have the MLK community, MLK Continuing the Dream Community Alliance, because you can't not speak to all the NAACP chapters. You can't not speak to major churches. Like, you can't just ignore us. And so that's kind of what this, opportunity is to say, not only we want you to see us, but we want you to, there's questions that we're going to lovingly gather. And we're also saying at the end of the day, we're also a resource for you. If you're trying to do any of these things, you're going to need us to be the ones to actually help you to deliver, to improve the community. Mm-hmm. So I'm in the question asking mode. I don't have the answers, but I'm like, it's worth me putting myself out there to say, here's an opportunity that we can't leave on the table. $2 billion over 5 years, and we're 3 years into a 5-year commitment. That demands some
if
opportunity.
You get the $2 billion.
I don't think there's a get. If anybody's investing something, right, in any of those 6 areas, we want to be aware of what those opportunities are so Black people can take advantage of it. It's not like there's $2 billion worth of checks being written. Yeah. They're saying they're going to invest in these areas, and I'm like, I'm with you. I'm 25 years in the corporate space. I understand. Let's go. Show us the money. Yeah. Show what programs are there for young people. Like, what opportunities exist for our young people? We got young people in our lives. We got a whole youth program, youth initiatives. We got supplier diversity. We need every Black business and anybody to be at that supplier diversity conference asking questions to identify, like, what are these opportunities? We got questions we're asking, and we're inviting them into this alliance. So, again, put your name in the chat if you're not already part of the alliance. And if you work for one of these companies, oftentimes the energy within the organization saying, what are we doing to fulfill our commitment to progress with WE.R.E? So that's the other reason I wanted to put this out there too, because a lot of people don't even know that their company, Microsoft being one of them, right, was one of the companies who signed the agreement, signed this commitment to progress. And so we're just basically saying, how can we support you in doing this work? We're starting lovingly.
But I'm asking the question of, how do you measure of that $2 billion, okay, how much of it is Microsoft saying that it's going to commit, and then how will they itemize those? Say if they say we're going to do $30 million worth of, and I'm just arbitrarily taking a number. How will you itemize that? How will you measure? We don't.
Those are the questions, and that's the question I see 5 times in the chat.
Attorney, and they give me a bill for their time. Well, it was 5. There was 3 hours on the phone at $300 an hour.
Right.
So how are they itemizing that? And then there were some things on there that you don't necessarily throw money at. When you talked about having a inclusive culture, an anti-bias inclusive culture. Yeah. Well, an inclusive culture is not just having a workforce that in raw numbers shows inclusive of certain groups, comparable to the ethnic makeup of the state or what have you, but also an inclusive culture in terms of a boss not telling someone of Afro-Caribbean culture that we don't want dreadlocks here.
Right.
Or being, something that where people in their personhood, in their being, feel that I'm being judged for being who I am and walking in my skin, where other people have to learn to be more acceptance that your culture and your style is not what is going to be normalized.
Right.
And we're seen as the abnormal who must conform to be here. Well, that's not necessarily a dollar value thing that you itemize. It's a system of training, looking at the world, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
So how do you realize that? And getting people to bring themselves to realize that that's what we have to do. I mean, we as pastors understand. We're preaching things. I'm preaching to people who now have accepted things that 25 years ago, when I returned to the Pacific Northwest, said that they would literally stand in front of the pulpit before I would get away with doing certain things, and that now they stand for, because 25 years later, there has been a transformative change in how they see the world.
Right.
Yeah.
And so corporate culture is going through that just like religious culture.
Right.
So how do you, that's on the list of things that's mentioned relationship to this $2 billion, but I don't think that's necessarily something that you throw money at. So that's why I'm concerned with the funnel that all this is going through. There's got to be a think tank behind this, and there's got to have some real robust system in place to oversee this. First of all, to define the scope of what we're trying to do. Specifics. You got to, when you're talking about money, you got to get to the specifics.
Right, and again, what I love about what you just said about culture, that's part of the reason I actually left corporate America, because I felt like there was an opportunity for us to do some work from the outside that you can't really do from the inside, right? There was an opportunity to have conversations, to do things differently. So we do work now that's actually creating a space for leaders to have a new operating system, to think differently. Because we got to say, what are you doing differently from an equity and inclusion perspective that's going to lead to different outcomes for those Black Washingtonians, right? Like, equity is not saying the system is just going to continue to do what it does, because systems are designed to maintain the status quo. It's like, what are you going to do? Changing systems means you change individuals. So we do work called the Living Powerfully experience, right? It's about changing you and having you look at your saboteurs, your own saboteurs, and then creating a space, right? We've talked about this. We went through 6 weeks of living powerfully, some of that work. So we got to have an opportunity. It's not about me, but it's about we. It's like, how do we show up differently? Because we are the system. We are the system. So I'm curious. Again, we're coming to close. We got some people online who wanted to say some things. I know Eddie Rye might still be on, and there's a we call this the MLK, Continuing the Dream Community Alliance. And next Wednesday, we're actually celebrating the 61st anniversary of MLK's March on Washington. And I think you're going to be featured. Is that right? So you want to pull up the flyer real quick and see if Eddie Rye wants to talk a little bit about what's going down as you start?
As far as the program next week?
Yeah, and kind of celebrating 61 years of the March on Washington. Why is this the right way for us to approach this, again, very challenging opportunity, leading with love, approaching it in a collaborative way? Like, we're trying to follow MLK's lead. Some people are like, want to burn it down. I'm like, that's not my style, right? We want to ease into this conversation and show ourselves as resources. That's kind of how we're doing this. But we also want to make sure that there are really resources, and what are they?
I don't look at it as the 61st commemoration, not celebration, because it wasn't an achievement unto itself. It was an attempt to provide public pressure toward the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Bill. That probably would not have been passed were it not for the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. But it actually is the 69th commemoration of the killing of Emmett Till. The reason why the March on Washington was scheduled for August 28th is that's when Emmett Till was killed, August 28th, 1955, which is what Rosa Parks said was on her mind on December the 1st, 1955, when she refused to give up her seat on a bus, which she had done many times before. But she said she had the murder of that helpless little boy from Chicago on her mind. And when that white man asked her to give up her seat, she refused, because she had Emmett Till on her mind. That was the George Floyd apocalyptic event of their generation. That was a transformative event, and it was still resonating. And so the March on Washington was chosen because it was the 8-year anniversary of the death of Emmett Till. And that thing was still percolating, creating energy. Because when you mess with the children, all right? When you mess with the children, it's like Uvalde. When you mess with the children, it really points to something in our society. So when we look at 69 years from Emmett Till, how safe are the children in the village? And when we look at gun violence, it is the number one cause of death for youth in American society. Not tuberculosis, not cancer, not polio. It is gun violence. And we ain't passed a single gun law in this country to make it less likely. So when we gather, we're looking at a Republican Party that Trent Lott said, former senator from Mississippi, when they asked him, you all always talking about making America great again. When was America at its greatest? He said 1955. That was the year Emmett Till was killed.
Wow.
So the society, the way it was in 1955, no birth control pill, no legal protected access to abortion for women, Black folks still in the back of the bus, no civil rights movement yet, no Equal Rights Amendment yet. And so no gays and lesbians coming out of the closet, living openly according to who and how they love. that Trent Lott was saying that iteration of America
Right.
was when it was at its greatest.
Wow.
And I understand how he is a white, heterosexual, pseudo-Christian male. I'm clear to say pseudo. Christian male, that it was great for him. But that's the America they want back.
Yes.
And so as we gather on August the 28th on the 69th anniversary of the death of Emmett Till, there are forces afoot in American society that have seized one of our two major political parties, like a demon taking hold of a body, and have put a joker, the likes of which Batman combated, to be its nominee. A joker, the head of an infected body, who have a plan now to take us back to 1959. And our collective responses we gather under the banner of Christ and whomever else is to say, hell no, we ain't going back. Because 1955 America was an America that mutilated children and threw their bodies in the Tatachie River and castrated them and disemboweled them and bashed their heads in because they didn't subscribe to the mores of the dirty South. We don't want that America back.
Nope.
No, we don't.
That's wonderful.
We don't. Eddie Wright, I know you had a lot to do with anything related to MLK. Can we bring Eddie Wright into this conversation as well?
Am I on now?
Yes, sir, you are. How are you?
Just fine, just fine. I'm glad to see that our keynote speaker is on the program, Reverend Dr. Leslie David Braxton. He also hosted a town hall on Project 2025, which was very informative. And matter of fact, the video chief out at NBCF, Kevin Meek, says if you go to the NBCF YouTube page, that information is still available to people that want it. But we're as you can see our scene, we're not going back. No Jim Crow, no Project 25, and reparations now. And so we're just trying to really keep things real and alive. I heard the earlier part of the conversation about the $2 billion supposed to come to the Black community. When I suggested to you earlier, Dr. Tracy, that you find out how much has been awarded so far.
It's not an award. I just want to be the one to clear. I got to keep correcting and clarifying. There is no $2 billion of awards that are coming to the Black community. I just want to make sure we're clear. They said they were going to invest $2 billion in those areas aligned with supplier diversity, increasing equity, investments in our youth, paid internships for our youth, as well as focused on education and leadership development. So that was I just want to make sure there's no $2 billion checks. But for all those things, if they're investing $2 billion in those things, we as a community can benefit intergenerationally. So I just want to make sure.
What have we got to date? What have we received to date of that promise from 3 years ago?
That is a great question. And for Rainier Avenue Radio, you guys can keep watching online, but Rainier Avenue Radio, thank you guys for joining us. We're going to end on Rainier Avenue Radio. We're going to keep it moving. Great question, Eddie Wright. We don't know. That's why we're asking the questions. That's why the Martin Luther King MLK Continuing the Dream Community Alliance is activating. That's why we're formalizing this $2 billion WE.R.E Community Activation and Empowerment Taskforce, because we don't have those answers. But it's worth asking the question in a very visible way. On 11/11, this I just pulled this together in 2 days, literally, y'all. I pulled it together because I didn't have a whole lot of time on the Black Collective agenda. I didn't have a lot of time with the NAACP, but people want this information. So I wanted to take a full hour of this show so that we're online and we got people who are saying, yes, tell me more. We got this gentleman here who, like this beautiful woman here, are willing to say, this is worth us having a conversation about. Wake up, everybody. And there's some song called Wake Up, Everybody. Yes. So wake up, everybody. We have an opportunity to show up and to not, again, don't make up no stories about a $2 billion worth of checks, but there are $2 billion of opportunities, investments to improve the lives of Black Washingtonians in key areas specifically identified. There is a plan. Now, let me be clear. They're not activating with the urgency, the transparency, or the clarity that I'd like. That's why I'm here.
Okay, well, actually, I want to go back to a comment Pastor Braxton made earlier. That is, if there's any kind of commitment, why would Microsoft be disbanding its DEI program?
Wonderful question.
Americans were involved getting furloughed on that from that from that program?
We are asking those. That was a wonderful question. Absolutely. So part of what we're doing today is if you have a question, put it in the comments that you want us to gather as we bring it into the space of this, back to this community. And on 11/11, that's November 11th, it's also a Monday, we'll be physically back here. We're inviting community, but we're also inviting WE.R.E. We're inviting the WE.R.E. leadership. We're inviting all the people who are going to be at that Supplier Diversity Conference. We'll get an individual invitation from me. Hello, right there, inviting them on 11/11 to say, if you're really serious, we're going to have Black businesses in the room on 11/11 at MLK wanting to take advantage of whatever you're doing. Like, that's the beginning. Let's start with where they're at. Does that make sense? What are your thoughts? I mean, again, I'm here asking questions. I don't have the answers. I'm asking questions. We got some solutions, but I'm just saying we got to have information in order to activate.
Well, it seems to me if we're talking $2 billion worth of investments versus allocations, then to whom are these corporations reporting their investments?
WE.R.E. So
if we've invested in these areas, to whom are you reporting
Sure
so
line.
that we can keep account of these quote unquote investments? And do we agree that that was an investment? Is that measurable? And then also, does that work in a reciprocal way to where our community that has been treated inequitably, that we could suggest or ask that we need you to make investments in prospective engineers by having this amount of internships for graduating seniors or people or young Blacks studying engineering who need summer jobs and internships to set them up for postgraduate employment. So we need you to have X amount. And given that you're deconstructing your DEI programs, does that smell to you too much like a reactivation of DEI? Is that going to run you into litigation with those who say, well, no, that's not fair. You're discriminating against us who had privilege all along. These are kinds of questions that I have when you start talking about the investment, because it seems to me if you're investing to help my lot,
right,
then I ought to be able to give you some suggestion on how I want you to invest on my behalf.
I love it.
And then when you say you have invested, to whom are you reporting that? So we can calculate and keep pace with that. Because I'm like Eddie Rod. Well, how do we know who's invested what and where and when?
So that's Sherline. That's the executive director, Sherline Wilson. And I definitely agree we should continue to, she wanted to get through this this upcoming Supplier Diversity Conference. And then she said I'd be, open to have some follow-up conversations. So I look forward to having the two of you. I think I may have rubbed it the wrong way by asking questions. So I think I needed the pastors to come in prayer and meditation. I lovingly. So she invited me to be a part of their executive advisory. Invited 3 ladies to be a part of their executive advisory board. One of them was like, I don't know if this sounds right. The other one was like, are you paying us? And I'm like, look, I'll do it for free because I don't care. Yes, count me in. Right? Like, because I'm here for the people. Like, I want to show up, and I need for us to be clear. And I believe she's not the problem. I believe she is, someone who we can all support in getting this work done in community. That's why we started with the MLK. That's why we said we're leading with love. Like, if I'm optimistic, then I'm optimistic in the sense that I believe that there's some good work happening. I believe that there's some organizations doing great work. He looked at me almost like I'm crazy, but I'm optimistic. I believe some good things are happening, and whatever they are, I'm gonna need y'all help to go. We're gonna all be asking some questions. I'm pulling data together, but we're gonna have to pull people into a conversation that looks different than what it's been for the last 3 years, right? Again, clarity, transparency, urgency are my 3. And then awareness, action, and accountability. So I'm here lovingly inviting them to be a part of this conversation. Any other actions and thoughts? Anyone put in the chat, please. If there's anyone who wants to join and share some thoughts, please feel free to have them join us online, and you can pull them in. Any thoughts? Again, you've been through this. Both of y'all have been through this process. Any thoughts from anyone in the room? Anybody want to share? Again, I think it's important that we show up, that we ask the questions, and that we come back again. We'll invite you here on 11/11. Can you put the link in put today's link in? You'll be able to watch this over. We'll have updated information about 11/11 as well. But actually, the Supplier Diversity Conference on 9/5. Can you put that in the chat as well? We want you to show up. We got to show up for opportunities. Yes, we got a question. Speak as loud as you can.
I was wondering, where is the supplier diversity?
So, thank you for asking. The Supplier Diversity, did you put it in the chat, the link? Do you need for me to do that? So the Supplier Diversity Conference is at the Microsoft Convention Center, like he said. And it is, I don't have the address, but the Microsoft Convention Center. And we have the address in the link. He has the link, and then we'll put it in the chat for you. It's at the bottom of that text that I sent, and then the email that I sent. It's in the email too, so it's everywhere.
Who is giving the actual conference?
WE.R.E. There is an organization called WE.R.E, Washington Employers for Racial Equity. It's a coalition, right? There it was like 80 to 100 companies. I think it might be 65 or so now. I don't know the exact numbers, so don't quote me. But they have reports that they've done. They have documentation, for our review. So I think this again, Pastor, with the influence that you have, I think we bring in the, what is it called? The Pastoral Alliance. Ministerial, what is it called? Ministerial Alliance?
Tacoma Ministerial Alliance, Black Clergy, United Black Clergy.
Can you reach out to your people? Because this requires some type of integrated conversation where we're like, right?
Pastor Braxton got to pull
I'm talking to everybody. Can you reach out to your people? We need our people to be like, hey, here's an opportunity. Here's an opportunity, right? Here's an opportunity for us to show up differently. I don't know what success looks like, but I do know the reporting even that Sherline is doing at her level is at a high level. It is not at a what can you and you go to do? Like, what are the resources? What are the opportunities? What are the best practices? There's a few things on their website, and that is not going to activate for us. It's not at the level where we as a community can go immediately activate. So we're trying to figure out what that looks like. And I actually have some thoughts. Yes, ma'am. Do you have another question?
I'm just listening.
Okay.
Antoinette.
Is she on?
Hi. Hello. How are you doing today? Happy to be here. And love and appreciate the enthusiasm, the poise and the drive, and the invitation to be here today.
Thank you.
I would like to say, as just a community member and a small business owner, and somebody who would love to be more active in the community, and but has been around and to witness and see a lot. I think that the problem is that we all know what it is. I mean, and that's what they want to keep telling us and reiterating is what, but they're not telling anybody how. And so it's always the how that's being left out. And like you said, there's not a lot of transparency. Yeah, there's some numbers out there and there's some information out there, but I mean, 90% of us don't even know how to get to it. And they make it that way for a reason. I hate to be the squeaky wheel, but I'm willing to put myself out there to save the people, to say that I've seen it firsthand. I try not to name no names, but it's hard not to name, names when, you've seen it happen. But all I can say is that Pastor definitely was asking some of the right questions. Some of those questions can be answered. And there are a lot of programs out here, like you said, that are taking the money. They wrote up a program or a purpose, let's say that, but they had no program behind it. So when they got the money, they're basically playing with it, and only that, 20% left once they're done figuring it out, is left to actually go out to the community. It's stretched so thin that it's not making a difference. And I'm just going to say, like with the program that I was in, when a small Black business is put in the middle of downtown Seattle, and we know what the state of downtown Seattle is like right now, and the amount of money they were given and the little bit of structure and know-how, we were told what, but we weren't told how and shown how. And I think that's where a lot of this money needs to go in our communities, is actually showing people how. showing people how to find information, showing people how to reach those heights, doing a lot of teaching, a lot of scholarships, a lot of apprenticeships, and teaching people, showing people how, and not just telling them what. So I'm trying to be on Tracy's level and lead with love right now. I'm just saying that's what it is.
No, I love that. And that's why I'm here. When you say we have to teach, we have to create the technical assistance. I actually reached out to the Office of Equity because I know they did some technical assistance. They paid for some technical assistance for the $200 million Community Reinvestment Fund. I actually volunteered to support that work as well. And I'm like, that's the perfect organization, I think, that would be like, how do we create a space where you don't have to invest your time for free, where you get to show up, right? Where people get to get the training, the technical assistance, the investment that they need to understand what are the opportunities? How do we take advantage of this $2 billion? We were running around trying to get 200 million. We're talking 2 billion investments in us. What is that investment? What does it look like at an operational level? So we have some conversations with the Office of Equity, right, from an investment perspective, to say, how do we get to a place where we have these questions answered again? Because I know what's happening at the WER level. They're not at the how do we make sure community gets involved. They're still in this process of trying to make sure that they're providing value to those organizations. Like, that's their investment. Our investment is how do we get Black people actually to benefit from the $2 billion? They're actually at the level where they're saying we want to make sure that the organizations are providing their reports, that they're getting their investment from being even part of the group. So Sean R. Moore, I see a comment from you. Did you have anything else you wanted to share, Antoinette? Thank you for that. That was beautiful.
You're welcome. And no, thank you for just giving me the moment to speak. Actually, let me say one more thing, because I want to also say that I think a lot of money could go into health. And I know, mental health is really big right now, especially after the pandemic. I'm saying? All the way from small children to adults are in need of mental health. But there's other ways that they can, feed us health wise, like invested in what our kids are eating at school. And especially if in the Black areas that, they're less likely to have more meals outside of school, then they should be focusing on having those meals that they have at school be the best meals that they can be, and actually be nutritious and things like that, and actually feeding their brain so they can learn. But just things like that. There's so many little things that they could invest in, and they're just acting like they don't know what to do.
So let me say yes, and again, I'm trying to align with what they said they were going to do. They didn't say they was going to be working on education and food vouchers for Black children. I'm just saying, I'm being honest. But we want to hold them accountable for what they said they were going to do. Does that make sense? I mean, we got to say something like this. We're talking about scope. We want to be very clear. They're not paying out $2 billion in checks, but they said they were going to invest in our Black community. And so our next step is sign up for the link, sign up for the Supplier Diversity Conference. Please, link is in the chat. We're asking you to stay with us on 11/11. So between September, when the Supplier Diversity Conference happens, that gives us a couple of months to connect with the Office of Equity, to really bring this conversation forward, to get more of our community saying, yes, I want to be ready when these opportunities come through. Because you're right, they don't have it at our level yet. But I think it's important enough for us to invest in the conversation. There's more to come. So on 11/11, Monday, we'll be right back here at Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Baptist Church. Look out for our efforts online. I know there were some other videos we had with MLK. Did you guys want to share anything before we go? Any other final words about the importance of how we show up?
No, I think it's important for us to show up. I think the questions tonight really are important questions to take to the conference. And as I echo Dr. Braxton and all of the people that have spoken, is that we really do need a plan, because what happens is, if there is no plan, then this is just a concept that's cannot be realized. And I am optimistic. I mean, I'm always hopeful. And so if I did look like I had an optimistic attitude, I do. But I appreciate you opening the door, because sometimes the door has to be open in order for us to be able to get the resources that we need. But I think the last question that I have is, and I think we've heard it over and over. What really does investment look like? You know, what's
That's the main
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
I think we all have is what does it look like? And again, even if they're talking about it at this level, I needed to at the next level to say, how do my people take advantage of it? How do we activate? So we're going to show up at the conference. We're going to be asking some loving questions. We're really showing up as, again, a resource for you. So if you're one of those individuals or organizations, we're asking you to lean in. And if you're community, we're asking you to lean into community as well. Show up with us, for us, so that we can change this. We got some opportunity here, for sure. Any final words, my dear?
No, I want to get back and hear what Joe Biden said tonight.
Oh, so he's going to...
I'm with him.
So thank you all for joining us online. We appreciate you. We look forward to the next step. Again, check out the links in the chat and more to come. Thank you so much.